During the 19th century, American leaders kept an eye on Nicaragua as a potential site for a transoceanic canal. This requires a much longer route than Panama, but most of it is already navigable through a river and lake. U.S. Navy warships periodically arrived at Nicaraguan ports to protect American interests and fostered U.S. business interests under the strongman rule of President Jose Santos Zelaya. When Zelaya began courting Europeans for the building of a canal and welcome European business interests, Americans called Zelaya a tyrannical, self-serving, brutal, greedy disturber of Central American peace. As a result, the Taft administration dispatched U.S. military forces in 1909 to aid a rebellion led by General Juan José Estrada, forcing Zelaya into exile. A pact was signed with the Estrada government, making Nicaragua a U.S. financial protectorate, which is a colonial status similar to that imposed on the Dominican Republic. In 1912, U.S. military forces were sent again, this time to suppress a revolt against the government of Adolfo Diaz, the heir to Estrada. In November, Diaz ran unopposed, and his victory was celebrated with a reception aboard the USS California. To deter further challenges, some 100 U.S. Marines remained as a presidential guard. In 1926, a political faction led by Juan Bautista Sacasa, pictured, declared himself president based on liberal policies supported by most Nicaraguans and local leaders. His government was promptly recognized by Mexico. American Secretary of State Frank Kellogg warned of, quote, Mexican-fostered Bolshevik hegemony intervening between the United States and the Panama Canal. President Calvin Coolidge ordered U.S. warships and more Marines to Nicaragua. Undersecretary of State Robert Olds candidly explained the reason for this intervention in a memorandum dated January 2, 1927. Quote, There is no room for any outside influence other than ours in this region. Until now, Central America has always understood that governments which we recognize and support stay in power, while those which we do not recognize and support fall. President Coolidge told Congress that, quote, disturbances and conditions in Nicaragua seriously threaten American lives and property and endanger the stability of all Central America. The Americans negotiated a compromise between the two factions, but one general refused to sign the agreement. Augusto Cesar Sandino, pictured, and his followers kept their arms and vowed to fight the Yankee invaders. Sandino supporters were poor farmers, artisans, miners, and indigenous groups in the northern provinces. He demanded independence from foreign influence, ending the monopoly of large coffee farms owned by American and British corporations, increased wages, and restoring expropriated Indian lands. The first battle took place on July 16, 1927, when Sandino and some 400 men attacked a U.S. Marine camp near the Honduran border. The Marines, numbering less than 100, held out with the aid of airplanes fitted with machine guns and bombs. By April 1928, the number of Marines had grown to 5,700 and 21 had been killed. That month, Sandino's army blew up 2 American-owned mines known for treating their workers poorly. The U.S. press began describing their intervention as a war rather than a police operation, and some questioned the official view of Sandino as a bandit rather than a patriot or revolutionary with genuine political grievances. The Marines, shown here with a captured flag, were accused of assaulting and raping Nicaraguan women. Some of Sandino's men were known to torture and execute civilians suspected of helping the enemy. Marine Corps airplanes bombed what they believed were Sandinista camps, killing hundreds of innocent civilians. Sandino offered a compromise to lay down his arms if the Marines left. American Senator George Norris of Nebraska, pictured, said that the Coolidge administration had, quote, used the armed forces of the United States to destroy human life, to burn villages, to bomb innocent women and children from the air, end quote. Senator William King of Utah added, quote, in the case of those poor, defenseless people of Nicaragua, we send our armies down there, and our airplanes, and we drop bombs upon their little villages and hamlets and destroy and kill and wound and burn. Americans pressing for the withdrawal of Marines included religious and women's peace groups, socialists, communists, and a dozen progressive U.S. senators. They charged that the intervention was illegal and Congress had not properly authorized it, that the situation in Nicaragua was not a national security issue and thus required no military intervention. President Herbert Hoover acknowledged international and domestic criticism in his first State of the Union address on July 3, 1929, declaring his intention to withdraw some 1,600 U.S. troops from Nicaragua after the U.S. train Guardia Nacional was ready to take over. This national police force, it was thought, would allow the United States to maintain economic control of Nicaragua regardless of who was president. On July 5, 1931, 5 days after 8 Marines had been killed in an ambush, the U.S. Senate passed a non-binding sense of the Senate resolution calling for American forces to be immediately withdrawn from Nicaragua. 1 year later, with still no withdrawal, Congress passed a bill prohibiting the administration from transporting additional U.S. troops to Nicaragua. The Hoover administration finally withdrew all U.S. troops in January 1933 and turned the Guardia Nacional over to their chosen commander, Anastasio Somoza Garcia, a graduate of the Pierce Commercial College in Philadelphia. General Somoza maneuvered his way into the presidency in 1936 to begin a 43-year family dynasty through a series of manipulated elections supported by the U.S. government. Somozans used the army to spy on opponents, enrich themselves, and suppress dissent. The last in the line of the Somoza family dictatorships, Anastasio Somoza Debayle, was overthrown in 1979 by rebels bearing the name of Sandino, the Sandinista National Liberation Front, ending a century of American colonial rule of Nicaragua. The Sandino War cost the lives of an estimated 3,000 Nicaraguans, and 136 U.S. Marines were killed. Bill Gandol served with the Marines in Nicaragua during this war. Many years later, at age 77, he reflected on his service there.
My name is William Gandol. I am now 77 years old. I was born in New York in the United States of America, of working class parents. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18 years old and came on the United States ship Ogallala through the Panama Canal to Corinto. Then we started to fight the Sandinistas, which we were told were bandits. And we started to help the conservative forces to try to kill Sandino and his men. We committed many atrocities against the Nicaraguan people. We killed women and children, we killed men, we burned houses, we raped women. I personally took part in rapes of women. One time 19 Marines raped one woman in Managua.
Come on back a little. Go ahead.
This was once the National Palace. 100 persons perished here. Collector General of Customs Irving Lindbergh was one of the Americans who escaped, but his chauffeur waiting outside was killed.
Las pérdidas hasta ahora se estiman en más de 30 millones y 1,000 muertos y otros tantos heridos y contusos.
Mr. President, I express the sentiment of all Americans in Managua when I say that we are glad if our services are of assistance in this terrible calamity. I can assure you and your people that you have the profound sympathy of the government and people of the United States.
La generosa cooperación americana prestada por el Cuerpo de Marinos, la Guardia Nacional, la Comisión Canarera y la Cruz Roja Americana en esta hora terrible de Nicaragua impulsa al gobierno de Nicaragua a expresar su reconocimiento al pueblo y gobierno y pueblo de Estados Unidos en la más elocuente manera que el lenguaje humano pueda contener.
Nuestro capital ha desaparecido. Sí. ¿Y señora, no se le murió a nadie?
Gracias a Dios, señor. Hasta la vez nuestra.
Hablen. El automóvil de la recaudación de aduanas. Aquí murió el chofer. ¿No quiero salir?
Yo también. Para allá. Para acá,
¿Y a dónde le vamos? Eso está ya visto gas. No. Amor, se fue ya, hombre, Miguel. Vamos arriba, subimos los tejidos, vamos por acá. Con energía, vamos. Vamos. Vamos.
Aligérense que la casa ya va a caer.
Boy, Happy Home is sure gone now. You said it.
Mr. President, in the name of the American government and people, I wish to express my gratitude for your kind words of appreciation and to assure you of my profound sympathy for the Nicaraguan nation in this moment of dire distress.
The generous American cooperation given by the Marine Corps, the Guardia Nacional, the Canal Commission, and the American Red Cross impels the Nicaraguan government to express public recognition to the government and people of the United States in the most eloquent manner possible in human language.
Mr. President,